I actually had the pleasure of playing Keep It True twice. The first time was in 2010 with Anacrusis, and the second time was in 2016 with the solo band I had put together. Back in 2008, I had released a compilation of all of the old Anacrusis demos and some early rehearsal recordings that all became before the first album, Suffering Hour, was recorded. And the guy who put that CD out on a label called Stormspell, I think early in 2009, he said, hey, I know a guy in Germany, he does this festival. And it's kind of a smaller festival, and they really focus on like more obscure or real old school bands. And one of the things he really likes to do is put together reunion shows with bands who haven't played in a really long time. And so the last time Anacrusis had performed was in 1993. We had done a tour with Merciful Fate in the US, and then immediately after that we did about a month's worth of shows in Europe with Death, and then broke up. This guy said, hey, this guy Oliver would like to know if, maybe you guys would think about doing a reunion show and playing over at this festival in Germany. And so, I hadn't actually spoken to our guitar player, Kevin, in probably a year or so at the time. And our bass player, John, had a little falling out with him over a cover band they had a couple years prior. So things weren't really that warm between us at the time. So I said, hey, I had been hanging out with Mike Owen, our original drummer, and I asked John and Mike, I said, hey, what do you think about just getting together, maybe run over some stuff and see how it sounds, see how we feel about it, see if we can still even play this stuff, and before we, approach Kevin about doing this. So, and the thing about Keep It True, I was told, was that you have to commit very early, because the show happens, usually around April, and they announce the following year's lineup at the festival, and generally, all the tickets sell out on the spot. So I kind of had to give, a yes or a no answer well ahead of time. And so the three of us got together, started playing. We thought, I think we could maybe do this. Let's give this a try. We were all excited about the idea of going back over to Europe, and particularly Germany, because the shows we had done there with Death were, particularly well received. And so after a couple months, I called Kevin and I said, hey, here's what's going on. Obviously, we would, love to have you be involved. We'd love to have the entire lineup playing. And so, Kevin said, well, yeah, I mean, he was, busy with his band, his cover band, but he said, give him a couple months. And, we had all the way till the following spring. Give him a couple months, and he'd come down and join us. And so, I don't know. I think maybe he wasn't 100% sure we would follow through. So he was probably going to let us kind of test the waters with rehearsing a little bit to see how things would go. But anyway, so we had almost a year and decided to go ahead and re-record our first and second album with the original 4 lineup, which is the same lineup that was on both the first 2 albums. We never really were particularly happy with the way the recordings turned out. And we thought, well, if we have nearly a year to rehearse, this would give us something to do in the meantime. So that's what we did, and we began learning songs, and then Kevin joined us, and we spent the better part of a year rehearsing. And some of these reunion shows, sometimes the guys just say, yeah, we get together, learn a few tunes, get up and play. And we thought, if we want to do this, we really want to make it feel like a real Anacrusis show, not just a bunch of old guys getting together and running through a few other old songs. And so we really put a lot of time and a lot of effort into trying to get the band back in shape, musically, physically, all that. And so, I can't mention 2010 Keep It True without mentioning the Volcano, which probably everybody has already mentioned. But so what happened was, we had spent all this time rehearsing, did the CD of the first 2 albums together, and we were doing a warm-up show here in St. Louis about a week before we were supposed to head over, play in Germany. It was actually only maybe 3 days before we were supposed to fly out of St. Louis. So it was the Sunday before Keep It True, and I think maybe around Wednesday or Thursday of that week, I remember seeing something on the news about a volcano erupting in Iceland. And we were like, oh, okay, well, whatever. that's interesting. I remember joking like, with our luck, I'm surprised it wasn't, next week that happened, keep us from going, ha ha. And so I didn't pay much attention to it. And then, each day there was more and more in the news about, oh, so this thing's still going. Oh, now there's a huge dust cloud. Oh, now it's over Europe. Oh, now they're closing down the airports in Europe. And now there are no flights out of Europe. And we started getting kind of nervous then. In fact, I remember playing the show. And at that time, we really didn't know if we were going to be able to make it over to the festival or not, because everything was just completely shut down. And so we played the show the Sunday before for the local crowd, and to warm up for things. And I remember we went ahead and packed everything up just like we were going to be leaving that Wednesday morning. We got everything ready. We got everything packed. It was really a minute by minute scenario where we, kept an eye on the news. It's like, is anything changing? It was a day by day thing. And then I remember going to sleep the night before we were supposed to leave. And at that time, we didn't know if we would be going or not. And as luck would have it, I believe our flight the next morning was on. And I think it was like the first one, at least from our area, that was heading over to Germany since this whole thing started. So it really worked out. Now, we were already excited to play. And then, of course, the idea that we might not be able to play, and then being able to, after all, really had us, extra psyched, because it's kind of like, something taken away from you and then you get it back, you tend to appreciate it even a little bit more. And so I remember, we flew over and we played the show, and it was fantastic. We had an amazing time. The people, the crowd response, everybody that was involved with the festival, we were treated great. It was an amazing thing after having not played really since 1993. It was a pretty amazing feeling again. And it reminded us of, some of those shows that we had done right towards the end of that Death tour. There's a moment at pretty much every show just before you start playing, and you're on stage, the drums are checked, the vocals, mics checked, the guitars, everything's working, everybody's ready, and everyone's in tune. And you just kind of hold your breath, and there's an excitement, and there's a anticipation, there's a nervousness, because once you start playing, you get a feel for what the show's going to be like. And I remember there was just sort of like this buzz, and I know the band could feel it, and it seems like the whole audience was kind of, anticipating, because, even if they weren't big fans, I think a lot of people have been talking about us doing this reunion show. And so there was sort of a buzz there for sure, an energy. And I remember we just, when you first go into that first 10, 20, 30 seconds of that first song, you kind of know right then and there what's going to be like, what the feel's going to be like, what the crowd's going to be like, what the sound on stage is. It's like you never really know until you're in that moment. And I remember we started playing, and I could just tell. I could tell it was going to be a very, very special moment for us. The whole show felt very electric, very just, I don't know, the energy was there. We were probably overly excited. I mean, the fact that we were actually there after thinking about this for almost a year, and then thinking we weren't going to be able to make it, and then we actually were there, And we were just went out and if we were puppies, we would have peed on the rug for sure, because we were just, ready to go. To be perfectly honest, we walked off stage, and I know I was, and the fellows were like, oh man, that was really, really sloppy. That was not very good. And although the crowd was great, and we just, and then within 2 minutes, people started coming up to us and telling us it was like, the greatest thing they'd ever seen in their entire life. And maybe it was good beer, maybe it was the excitement. It didn't really matter, If they really, really had a great time, then that's all that really mattered. And I think that there is a certain connection that you make, it's like I looked out and saw people headbanging and fist banging and all that, usual kind of stuff you see. But I remember looking at some people, especially down front, and it sounds corny, but I think there were like almost tears in their eyes, a few of them. It was very emotional thing. there's always been a very deep connection between us and our fans. I think in large that has to do with our lyrical content and whatnot, that our music and lyrics are very introspective. And so I think that fans who listen to the band and are into the band tend to find kindred spirits there, because not just like, you know, they identify with what we're writing about as so much as that they feel that they know us, I think, through our lyrics, and they do. And every time, inevitably, when I meet an Anacrusis fan for the first time, it just almost always feels like someone I've known for years and years and years. At the point when we broke up, it's very, very easy to feel like you've maybe just wasted a very long time, and you've wasted years of your life, and what was this all for, and did it matter at all? And then to fast forward 17 years or whatever, and to get that feeling all over again, and to know that here are people who are not only still into the band, but got into the band in some cases after the band was no longer even together. And to feel that you've created something that can endure even for, you know, years is a great feeling. And it was a very, very important moment for me and for the rest of the band, because it was more than just a show. It was a little bit of a vindication for ourselves that, you know what, it wasn't all a waste of time. It wasn't all just this thing that came and went, you know, so that was very important. So I performed again there in 2016, and it was a very, very different feeling. It was a very, very different experience. I mean, the show was great. The fans were great. I had made a lot of really good friends, long-term friends, you know, a lot of that stemmed from that first appearance with Anacrusis over there. But it was a much different feeling, because at that time I knew, so, you know, Keep It True was to be the last of this. We did about 10, 12 shows, and it was the last show, and I knew it probably, chances are, probably would be the last show I would ever play, at least as far as Anacrusis material and whatnot. And so it was a bittersweet feeling, because on one hand, it was great to be back there in that environment. But on the other hand, I was, you know, it was bittersweet because I knew this was probably going to be the last time I'd be playing. We were doing an interview, as usual, standing outside the festival hall, and a fan came up behind me and was sort of got my attention in the middle of answering a question, and just started asking me, you know, things about the band, about the albums. And, you know, at first it was like, got a good chuckle. And then I, you know, realized, well, wow, this guy's actually really is a fan and knows the material, and he's actually asking good questions. So I started answering the questions. And so we kind of ended up having two interviews going on simultaneously there. But anyway, it was a lot of fun. It was great. We still, every once in a while, I get a little hello from the drunken fan through Facebook or whatever. And so that was fun. When we first arrived in Germany, we were picked up by the shuttle and taken to this village near the festival, where there was a hotel, B&B, that most of the band stayed in. And I remember being in the room and bringing gear in and carrying all of our guitars up and whatnot. And there were other band members milling around and whatnot. And I remember one of my guys coming in and saying, yeah, I was talking to the guys out there across the hall, and they're in Fifth Angel. And he said, yeah, one of the guys was asking, you know, what band are you guys in and stuff? And he told him Anacrusis, and he said that the guy from Fifth Angel said, oh, God, all I hear is Anacrusis, Anacrusis, Anacrusis this, Anacrusis that. and he says, this is all I've been hearing. So that, obviously, that psyched us up and made us feel like there was a nice little buzz going on. And so it made us that much more excited about the show. That evening, there's a little, kind of like a little hall there in the village that, I guess, like here in the States, we would have like a wedding receptions or parties, whatever, in a place like that. You'd rent it out. Well, it was rented out, and they did sort of I'm not sure if it was an official or unofficial kind of pre-festival warm-up show, where they had a DJ and playing old school metal and people hanging out, having a beer, talking. Mostly, I think it was for people traveling from out of the area to kind of hang out and have something to do that evening to prepare for the festival. And some bands were there hanging out, so we thought, well, let's take a walk down. It was just down the road. We went down, and so we're hanging out. It's very dark and just a few lights in there. And I don't know how many people, maybe 100, couple hundred people or something, all just sort of milling around, and lots of battle vests and leather jackets and, you know, band shirts. And so we're kind of just standing around, and I think Kevin kind of, you know, nudges me and goes, hey man, there's two guys standing just a few feet away. And one of them had an Anacrusis shirt on, and the other one had an Anacrusis patch on his jacket. We kind of took a couple steps over to him, and Kevin kind of pointed at the logo and went, you know, hey, cool band, you know? And the guy's like, yeah. And we kind of stood there, and then he goes, that's us. And they were like, what? And I go, yeah, we're Anacrusis, you know? And they were like, no, looking at us. And I'm like, yeah, we're Anacrusis. And they were just like, no. And so I reached into my jacket, and I took out my passport, and I kind of opened it for the first page, and it was kind of showing the guy's leaning over in the dark, looking, and I show him, sees the picture, sees my name there, and he just looks up at me, and he just throws his arms around me and almost just knocks me off my feet, you know. And this guy's like, and we're just, you know, cracking up and everything. And it turns out these guys had come from Istanbul, and not only all the way just for the festival, but particularly to see Anacrusis play, which we thought was really, really cool. And so that was kind of the beginning of, we knew this was going to be a very special show for us, a very special experience for us. And it really was. Speaking for myself and for Anacrusis, I can say we're all eternally thankful to Oliver and Keep It True for giving us that opportunity to bring our music back out into the light again after all that time. It's a pretty amazing thing.